happen? Did you hear that? How did this become this? Just by taking out some notes. It sounded beautiful, now it sounds terrible. That's called dissonance. We're familiar with cognitive dissonance, but before there was cognitive dissonance, there was just dissonance. And it really just has to do with music, with sound. It's from the root Latin word sonare, which gives us the English word sound and related words. And so if something is sonant or sonorous, it just means that it has the quality of sound. But when we use those words, we're generally trying to express the idea that it has a pleasant sound. Something is sonorous or sonant, it means it has a pleasant sound. So if it's dissonant, which is the opposite of sonant, that means it does not have a pleasant sound. It has an irritating sound, a conflicting, perhaps clashing sound. So we have those clashing notes. So what do we do about that? Well, we're talking about cognitive dissonance. We're going to use music as an illustration. But to go back to cognitive dissonance, the way our minds work is we store memories and repressed feelings and things like that in our unconscious mind. Well, the unconscious mind is also making us breathe and things like that. Things that are not in our conscious focus are in our unconscious mind. And so when a new thought comes into our head, into our conscious mind, there can be a conflict between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, and it has to resolve. If we have a conflict, sometimes what happens is the new thought loses and the unconscious mind wins. So, for example, people that are sort of typically practicing cognitive dissonance as a habit, you might say, what happens is that any new thought that doesn't agree with a preconceived notion, belief, idea, feeling, value gets thrown out. That can't be true because it doesn't agree with what I already know. Well, that's not healthy because, when does a person ever learn something new if they're going to take things that way? Well, with us as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses or, ex-members of any high control group, there's something different going on, similar, but what's in our unconscious mind is the old thoughts, because you can't delete thoughts from your brain like you can delete from a computer with a delete key and get rid of a file. The fact that we learned it is always going to be there, and we'll remember how we learned it, even if we realize that it's incorrect. It could be almost humorous in the future as we learn new things. But the fact that we can laugh at it means that it's still in our brain, right? What's also in our mind, though, is our unconscious mind, is the feeling that created. So, for example, when we were taught that it's all about the organization, they would say it was all about Jehovah's name, but in reality, it's all about the organization and its reputation, and it's all about the congregation and its reputation. So individuals were de-emphasized something like crazy, and we didn't really see it at the time, but it affected us emotionally, and it might still be in our brains. It might still be causing us to lack self-esteem and not to be able to accomplish things that we'd like to accomplish. Maybe go to college at the age of 50, or become a singer, or just do whatever, start our own business. So we have to figure out a way of resolving those conflicts that are in our mind as a result of the old information conflicting with the new information. So getting back to the music, how does that work? So let's take those two clashing notes, put them up here. It's even worse. But same notes, just a little apart. That's what happens. So how about if we get rid of the offending note, the one that came in after the one that belongs there, because the song is in F, it's an F chord, so F has every right to be there. So let's leave it alone. Take out the top note. Oh, that sounds pretty good. That's sonant. That's sonorous, right? Problem is that it's only one note. Can you imagine how boring life would be if we only ever heard one note? There'd be no songs. There'd be nothing. So let's put the other one back in for a second. Let's do something different with it. How about if we just raise it up a little bit and see if we can get it to harmonize? Oh, now there's harmony, right? Actually, no, that's not harmony. That's the same note, an octave higher. So we haven't accomplished anything. It sounds nice, but it hasn't. Still, we got one note. Again, every song from now on is going to have that one note. I don't think so. So let's go back to where we were, and let's just add other notes and see what happens. Wow. All I did was add two notes to the already conflicting notes, and look what happened. It went from this to this. Out of dissonance, we have beauty. The original notes are still living together, just as those old and new thoughts need to still live in our brains, because that's just the way it is. The idea of making turning two notes into one note, because the one's an offending note, it's creating a clash with the other one, so we go with the old idea, or maybe we try to go with the new idea. um, that's limiting ourselves, because we're not trying to be educated. We're refusing the new thought, and it's not going to help us. So that's not. I don't think any of us are seriously going to think of doing that. The other concept of, remember when I made went up one note, and so we made the two notes sound like one note. So the two notes were existing happily, but they're not really harmonious. So we're still a one note song as a person. We really haven't learned anything. So we haven't made any progress. But now the idea of adding all those other notes and turning a dissonance into something beautiful. And I played it all up and down the piano, all the same notes, just all over the place. So what that relates to is welcoming new information, and comparing it to the old information, both what's in our our unconscious mind, and maybe a new thought that we just learned yesterday. Maybe that's something we want to think a little bit more critically about. We either want to verify its veracity, or maybe change it, reshape it. So always welcome information. When we were in the organization, we did not do that. If we worked as a computer programmer, we probably learned about computer programming. It's not like we never learned anything. But in terms of things that related to our religious life and our life as social beings, we pretty much were one note people. The organization taught us that independent thinking is evil, and all our information really should pretty much come from the watchtower. So that would be the one note thing, and that would also be the two note thing, where we're trying to make them harmonize with each other. But the idea of welcoming new information, which is strictly verboten by the organization, that's going to benefit us a long way. That's going to help us to resolve these conflicts and turn something that was actually kind of conflicting in our mind into something very beautiful. But we have to figure out a way of making them work together. So all dissonance in music is actually it's usually deliberate by the composer. And I want to play you an example of clear dissonance that is resolved, and that's the whole point with dissonance. It is that it must resolve for it to be satisfying and pleasing to us. So this is the part of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And this is around the time that classical music gave way to romantic music, a little bit into the romantic period, and dissonance became a little bit more of the musical dialogue, and just more and more as time went on, until the last century, when it was just all over the place, and especially in jazz. But it's pleasing when it resolves. It creates tension, and then the tension is released, and it's more beautiful. So I'll give you an example of that. This is like about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes into the Moonlight Sonata. Can't give you a reference point, but here we go. Did you hear the dissonance? I'll play it again. You hear that? That's not even close to pleasant, but it's in there. So let's see how he resolves it. Well, let's see. That actually didn't help any, and I'll tell you why. Let's play it again. It's another dissonance. He did it to us twice in the same measure. First it's like this, then it's my good. I'm gonna stop playing that because it'll drive you crazy. But that's what Beethoven did. But listen to what follows all that. So it just grows from there, and I just wanted to play that one little bit. So You heard how it became beautiful, and do you remember the dissonance? You only know it because I pointed it out. It so the dissonance was a device deliberately used to create tension, to create turbulence, and once that turbulence is resolved, it is that much more beautiful. It's like waking up after a hurricane, and the sun is out, and flowers are blooming everywhere. It's that much more beautiful and gives us that much more joy to see that after all the turbulence. So same with music, and same with our minds. When we get to a certain point where we are able to control those emotions and not let them control us, because we've successfully been able to put information into our minds that doesn't remove the old information, but it dispels the thoughts and it dispels the negative emotions that are associated with that. We're going to be that much more happy that we took the effort to go through that exercise of resolving those cognitive dissonances in our mind. Well, that's just part one. Thank you for listening. But in part two, we're going to talk about expectation, and we're also going to be talking about music, how expectation can actually be beautiful if we allow it to be. So thanks for listening.